All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Lew Bryson, and Liz Rhodes. Plus, this week, special guests Jim and Ellen Hough from Liberty Whole Spirits. I'll let your host give an extended introduction to them in just a moment. Real quick, before we get started, as always, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co, and just want to show you a few different ways that you can interact with your host with their guests throughout the show today. So on the right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello and let us know where you're joining us from. If you have a question at any point during the show today, there's a little button at the bottom that says ask a question. So just tap that button and type your question in. I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show. And last but not least, feel free to invite some folks to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with that said, I will turn things over to you now, Marty, Liz, and Lou.
Thanks there, Will. Hey, why the moth go into the dentist office, even though he didn't have any teeth?
Oh, here we go.
Because his light was on. That's a little tribute to Norm Macdonald.
Is that a Norm joke? I want to
abbreviated Norm Macdonald joke. Watch the long version, his version on YouTube. It's great.
He was the king of the Shaggy Dog.
Oh, he was. He was great.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy, former senior master of whiskey for DIAGEO. Please, Jim and Ellen, don't bow down or anything. And also, even more impressive, 18 glorious months as the national brand ambassador for Benedine French liqueur.
That's very French.
Sacre bleu, everyone.
Benedine?
Benedictine. Did I say Benedine?
I think you said Benedine. I was like, you're a drug salesman?
Wasn't Benedine? Was that the stuff you put on your burns?
Benadryl.
Oh, Benadryl, yeah. I represent that too.
Benedine
For
was
18, the other 18 glorious months. And then for 8 years, I was co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo. And for the last 7 years, I have been the sole North American brand representative for Glencairn Crystal.
See, I'm making a smile with my glass. I'm smiling.
Oh, look at that. Lew has the golden chalice that he stole from King Arthur.
Beautiful.
Who also used to order from Glencairn. We're over 2,000 years old. Glencairn. All right. So
I'm going to just step right in here.
Okay, little Dusty Road.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhodes, technical distiller and spirit consultant. I am home today. That's fun.
Wow.
I have just over a decade experience in alcoholic beverage sector, including several different types of products and substrates and sites, including beer, rum, vodka. But particular favorite and expertise, of course, is in whiskey, and that's what we're going to be chatting about today, as every week. I spent most of my career at a tiny little mom and pop known as DIAGEO, but I'm now currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And if you would like to learn a little bit more about that, you can scroll down to the About the Host section. There's actually a link to my website. Give it a click, check it out. I'm also wearing a little Stouning Danish whiskey shirt, headed to their launch party this evening. So you can find Stouning Danish whiskey on your shelves very soon. So check that out as well. Lou?
Hey, Liz. Thank you. I'm Lew Bryson, a whiskey writer. I was the managing editor of Whisky Advocate Magazine for 20 long years and am now freelancing again. I'm a senior drinks writer for the award-winning Daily Beast website and the author of Tasting
Oh my
Whiskey
God. Yeah.
and Whiskey Masterclass. Yeah, I'm in Milheim. I got all of it now, baby.
You got all of
I
them.
got
All of the books. I can't even hold them.
And I regret to say that I left the other house in a hurry this morning, drove up here and realized that I had forgotten the Liberty Pole ride that Jim and Ellen were so nice to send me but I am drinking a Pennsylvania rye today. It is the Dad's Hat cask strength. And let me tell you, this thing is wow, that's an ass kicker. That is a big old whiskey. So,
Ass kicker is on like a scale of going up.
no, it's off the scale.
It's off
Off the scale. Way off the scale.
Well, you can drink their whiskey when we have Herman on.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Boom.
I love that idea. I love that idea.
perfect. It's perfect.
Really.
Marty Rock.
So, Jim and Ellen are my guests today, not least because we're fellow Pennsylvanians, but I mean, we're also friends. I've been out to your place at least once, I think once. No, twice. We were out there. I was out twice, I think.
Remember the
I know
backyard
I was out for the
Whiskey Rebellion tour.
festival? Mhm.
yeah, the Rye Whiskey Tour, which was at the same time as the Whisky Rebellion festival there in Washington, PA, which is the seat of the Whisky Rebellion. It was I got to tell you, it was wild. We came out of Pittsburgh on a bus. It was me and a bunch of whiskey writers, and I forget where the hell you got on the bus, Ellen, but all of a sudden Ellen gets on the bus and she starts talking about the Whisky Rebellion. One, like it happened last week, and two, like she was there through the whole thing. She knew every damn detail. It's like who was related to who and why they did that, why they really did that, and so on and so on. And then, I mean, we barely even had time to get into the national historical ramifications of it because all the little details were so cool. I mean, she's like pointing out the windows, like, yeah, he's buried over there, that kind of shit. It was just, you were amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, Jim and Ellen have Liberty Pole Spirits, distillery in Washington, Pennsylvania, which is south of Pittsburgh. The home of what is it? Washington and Jefferson.
W&J, Washington Jefferson College.
Jefferson, which is actually where the first chapter of my college fraternity, Phi Kappa Psi, was established, and I was out there for another time, and I stopped by the house, and I was really sorry I had because it was a hellhole. But so they make rye whiskey. You make bourbon as well.
We do.
But in Pennsylvania, you got to make a rye, and there it is. Awesome. So of course, the Liberty Pole is the thing that these crazy early patriots would put up when they wanted to say something. A final tradition. I was actually just talking to my wife about this on the way out here. We're driving up through central Pennsylvania, and the age of some of these towns is amazing. We're out here in the middle of the state, and they're founded in like the early 1700s. And I'm thinking, it must have been a goddamn wilderness, right? Just trees.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, I mean, a lot of these guys after the war was over, after the Revolutionary War was over, they got these land grants, and in the 1780s said, this Philadelphia, this is just too much. This is too civilized. I'm gonna get the hell out of here. And they went out into the woods and started a town wherever two streams came together.
Oh yeah.
And that's Pennsylvania. That's our heritage. And a bunch of people went out to southwestern PA, and God knows it's not great soil out there, but it'll grow rye.
Grows rye
pretty nicely, yeah. And and that's the Whisky Rebellion. No money, got whiskey. Federal government wants money. And that's where you go from there.
Kentucky, here we come. Ohio.
So I'm sorry, I kind of get carried away on that because I love talking about the Whisky Rebellion. Obviously, you do as well, Ellen.
Yeah.
Geez, can you fill in my huge gap here, which is, how did you guys start a distillery? Why did you start a distillery, and how did you get there?
Yeah, well, where to start? So I was a hobby distiller for years. I had a 10-gallon copper still that I just played
played making whiskey in the backyard, probably for at least 10 years.
Wow.
kind of hit that point in my career where I had grown tired of doing what I was doing, and I just didn't want to stick it out for another 7-8 years to get to retirement. Didn't want to play out the string, and thought, hey, I know how to make whiskey. How hard could it be? And at the same time, you should probably fill in the gaps with Tom Hart.
Well, so what happened was scared the bejeebers out of me. So, and I see Chris Koenig is on. Harold sends his regards. That's our old still. Hello. But anyway,
Your
I
old
love
still is named Harold?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great story too.
Our new
It's a
still
great
is named
story.
Harold,
It's
too.
yeah.
Harold too.
Harold
the
too.
Harold,
Big Harold.
Big Harold.
Big
Big
Harold.
Harold.
Big Harold.
Big Harold.
Big
But,
Harold, little Harold.
The story that really got us started was we had downsized when the boys that you met, Marty, they had both left for college, and we moved into a smaller cottage that had a private deck on the back. And so I had made friends with all of our neighbors, and I liked to sew at the time. I made quilts. And so one night, Jim is sitting out on this private deck, and he's just distilling his latest experiment. And the doorbell rings, and I am peeking through the peek hole because in Pennsylvania, the police cannot enter without a search warrant.
She thought it was the Fed.
I'm immediately thinking, oh my God, they found us. So I peek through the peek hole, and I see that it's the neighbor. And that neighbor was on the Whiskey Rebellion Festival committee. He was also a professor at W&J. So I gingerly opened the door, and his wife says, Ellen, I'd like to show Tom your quilts. And I said, oh, sure, come on in. So we have a big glass wall where you can see the deck. So immediately Tom saw what was going on. And I tried to distract him with the quilts, but he wouldn't look at the quilts. He was only looking at the still. And finally I said, Tom, my husband has a hobby. If you can smell it and it bothers you, we'll stop. And Tom said, I know what he's doing. And he made a beeline. And that night, the decision was made after about 2 hours of discussing that Washington, Pennsylvania had this festival, they have this history, but they had no distillery. And I think what convinced me, I know Jim likes the whiskey and I like whiskey too, but I think what really convinced us both was it was a chance to take one of those old towns in Washington that had sort of gone by the wayside, a chance to revitalize it. Because if you think about it, a lot of distilleries do that, right? You cannot, if everyone in your town is drinking whiskey every single day and they're finishing a bottle and buying another one, then they're probably an alcoholic. But if they're coming from out of state or they're coming from other areas,
and that's okay.
That's okay. So 62% of our customers, 65% of our customers now are not, they're coming for like Lew. They come because they're proud of Washington. They're proud of what happened. And so we did the best we could to honor that. And we think we have changed a town. And that's a great way to retire, I think. It's a great way.
That is cool. I was driving through Kentucky, parts really out there. And I saw this old abandoned, it must have been old mill or something in the middle of this, one of those really small towns that you
probably a grist mill. Were you
maybe
in southwestern Pennsylvania?
No, Kentucky.
Kentucky, that's right. Never mind.
You drive through it and you're through the town in less than a few minutes. And you just saw it probably was the main business in that town and once went under.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, oh man, if I had the money and the wherewithal and the knowledge and 1,000 other things, I would start that up, and that would be a cool little center to revitalize that town. So I totally agree.
I honestly, I think that, and Liz, I'm gonna warn you here that I'm being overly optimistic and moon-eyed about this, but I honestly think that might be the next thing.
For Liz,
we had little breweries come back, we had little distilleries come back. We're starting to see maltings come back. I'm starting to see people start mills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we used to have thousands of mills in this country. There's under 130 now.
Wow.
It's astounding.
Yeah, but Lew, don't you see? Wouldn't you think though that the mills because there are so many distilleries now and so many breweries, that the mills that would come back, they're going to be like the Home Depot of mills. They're just going to be really, really big ones.
Well, that's what we have now. No, what I'm saying is the thing with the really small ones is that they'll mill the grains that the big ones aren't interested in because there's not enough of it. Like Bloody Butcher,
there's a farmer nearby us in Washington County that bought one of those stone mills.
They still mill their own stuff.
It's giant, and people go there for his organic grain and the fact that he's mashing it on this big giant turning stone. It's really cool to see.
Yeah,
so, I think it's a good point, Lou.
This was a very fruitful, so to speak, trip this morning. One of the other things I was talking to my wife was we passed a sign. I mean, we were way out in the sticks this time. We went a different route, just took 2-lane roads up. But we passed a place that had a sign out, cider press open.
Yeah.
And it's a farm, one farmer will have the press. And my grandfather had one in his basement. I remember as a small child when farmers would come by with their apples and they'd put them in the press and he'd press the apples and
cool.
They'd take the cider home, and
I seriously think it tastes better.
It does when it's right out there. Yeah.
Well, I say let's go one step further, go way back in colonial times, get a stone mill, a grist mill, and get indentured servants. Bring that back and have them actually push the giant.
You are really channeling the Norm Macdonald thing here, aren't you? Right to hell over the top.
Depending on the type of equipment, stone mills can be great. I actually got to do a study a few years ago comparing stone to hammer to roller. And it was
because all you ever hear is the hammer and the roller.
But to your point, stone mills aren't typically a part of our industry, but what I found through the study was that the yield was much greater because we were able to achieve a particle size that was much smaller.
I was going to say, it's really fine.
Yeah.
About that local farmer, it's really fine flour.
Huh.
Lou, did you participate in the Rose and Rye, the first distillation at Stolen Wolf? They milled that. They milled that on a stone mill.
Rose and Rye bread? That rye?
Rose and Rye is a whole varietal of rye that pre-prohibition that's starting, a comeback.
Is that what you guys are distilling with, Rosen, or what are your?
No. So
Rosen. Not a lot of Rosen out there right now.
Not a lot of Rosen kind of disappeared after prohibition. A couple people kind of brought it back from a 5-ounce packet of seeds from a seed bank and have cultivated it. And over the last 5 years have actually produced enough for small distillations. And last year we did a batch, Laura Fields, who does the Delaware Valley Fields. They put on the American Whiskey Convention. She gave us, enough to do, one batch of Rose and Rye. Stolen Wolf is doing Rose and Rye. Our good friend Herman.
Yeah, when you talk to Cat's Hat.
Is working with another source that's bringing back Rose and Rye. So it's, it's just a pre-prohibition varietal of rye that is really cool.
And it does taste good. It works out good for us. Mm-hmm.
It definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
Because I was at the American Whiskey Convention, and Stolen Wolf had some new make from the Rosen, and
we definitely get a lot more floral characteristics off of that than our standard rye.
Yeah.
I like
it. And just another interesting Pennsylvania link that Dick Stoll at Michter's.
Right.
He was the distiller at the Pennsylvania Michter's, the old one.
Right.
Dick was probably the last guy to distill with Rose and Rye, and they got him in on one of the first batches of the comeback.
To bring it back,
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, Lou, not many people know that.
Now, Bill, I have a question for each of you.
Yes.
Jim, when you were distilling in your backyard for 10 years, Was that like by the light of the moon? Because is that legal in Pennsylvania? And am I now calling you out? And will the authorities retrospectively come back and
So,
knock
so,
on your door?
so
So you're
first of
just
all,
making that story up.
the statute of
Yeah.
limitations has passed. It is not legal, and I don't condone or recommend that anybody do it. But
I would suspect the evidence has been destroyed too.
the evidence
No,
has
it's
been-
right behind him. Look.
Whoa!
Okay. This is
Whoa! Whoa!
Oh,
No,
you
this
pushed me
is-
into it.
That's
Look
it.
at that.
Yeah,
Yeah, uh-huh.
yeah,
It's almost like a double diamond.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah,
Looks a little like a missile.
It was,
A
yeah.
little.
yeah. It was. We called it artwork in case you know,
Yes.
it's beautiful
So
copper.
does the neck come off to clean it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Frusticanal
guys.
section.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry. What, Liz?
I was saying frusticonical section.
Oh,
Wow.
there you go.
Wow.
The technical term.
Whoa,
yeah,
whoa.
That's why she's here.
yeah. Yep.
She is.
How many people
She's
She
know?
actually knows this shit. We don't. That's why she's here.
Well, and speaking of brains, so now, Ellen, your bio, you have all sorts of letters after your name.
Oh.
To the
What
point
is John?
where it's like someone just slapped the alphabet right after your name. So you have all these degrees, you did all this stuff, and then your husband comes home and says, "Hey, why don't you give all that stuff up? Let's start a distillery."
Well, I like manufacturing. I've always thought that's a way to hire lots of people, and I like manufacturing. So all those degrees are related to manufacturing. I started my career with General Motors and ended at doing report editing for Consol Energy. But the Jim, that's how he won me over, was saying it's going to be a little manufacturing plant. I was like, I'm on board. Let's do it.
That's sweet talking, Jim.
He knows
That's the
me
way to
too
hold
well.
these heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manufacturing.
That's it.
Who's the way to my heart? Man's what is a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. To Ellen's heart is through manufacturing. Everybody.
Yep, yep. You know, it's a lot more expensive than a dozen roses, though.
There.
A bit of a mistake.
It's a cool way of manufacturing. I think it's the coolest way we've ever done manufacturing because, every year you're dealing with a different type of, it's the same grain, but it comes from the soil differently. And then the yeasts are different. And now we have COVID with bottle shortages and, different barrel issues. And so it's more than manufacturing.
Always a challenge.
It is the coolest manufacturing. I have to give it all to him. It is the coolest form of manufacturing. Really.
Well, you guys are. Distillers now are rock stars. Like I said, I was at the Bourbon Festival, and there was a distiller there. Boom. They attract a crowd, and people want to meet you and have you sign the weirdest objects, whatever they can get their hands on. And
Marty, I also think, and Jim and I both said this, when you read about the history of the Whiskey Rebellion, the rebels were always meeting around whiskey. They were always using whiskey to get the things they needed. To this day at Liberty Pole Spirits, we do get a lot of politicians coming in. Can we have that private room? We need that private room. And they drink whiskey and make decisions based on, the fact that they're much calmer and happier. So it's more than being a rock star at a conference. I think we actually, whiskey has brought people forward in a very friendly way, helping them understand each other better. And so it's really cool to make it and then see how that works with them.
always here in Chicago, the aldermen used to use taverns as their polling places.
Hello.
And it was basically their ward headquarters would be a particular tavern.
Yes.
And booze was always a huge part of American history and Ireland and Scotland.
There's reports from the Pennsylvania legislature in the 1830s that they drank whiskey at their desks because the beer would go flat.
Well, that makes sense.
So instead they drink whiskey.
But would they stop drinking that beer though? In the 1830s, sure they weren't that discriminating.
Oh yeah.
The
Well, I think it
original
was just an
Boilermaker?
excuse to drink whiskey mostly.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, and that's why I know Lou, you love beer, but I say screw beer. Whiskey. It's concentrated beer.
It is. It is.
That's exactly right. It's less fattening.
Beer
is.
afterlife.
It is.
Look at me. I'm on the all whiskey diet. I've lost 3 days.
Yeah, there you go. So Liz, you had some questions about farming and supply. Can we get onto that? Is that?
Yeah, let's skip on to that. So I know you're locally sourcing, which is awesome. We talked a little bit about rose and rye. So can you tell us about kind of how you're sourcing your grain, how you're integrating that into the distillery and making your products?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was hobby distilling, I was, just buying cracked corn from Agway. But, realizing when we went and opened up a legal distillery, we really needed a more, kind of a better corn, a more reliable source of corn. So we started going to local feed mills and asking the feed mill operators, some of whom may have had roots in illegal moonshining and knew, knew the grains.
Don't tell him the whole story.
I won't. So with, we kept hearing this bloody butcher over and over and over again. And eventually, one of the grain mill operators that was very much recommending bloody butcher put us in touch with a young farmer who he thought might be able or might be willing to grow this for us. And, Jeremy has been growing our corn since we opened our doors. Cool story. Bloody butcher is a non-GMO. It's an open pollinated grain. You need to separate it from your fields of GMO corn. And Jeremy at the time was a dairy farmer. They had dairy cattle, so they grew a lot of feed corn for the cattle. But they had these fields that were separated, and he wanted to do it for us, but he didn't think he knew how to do it. And he was sitting around the table one night, and the grandfather was at the table, and the grandfather said, "Well, Jeremy, I grew heritage corn. I can help you." And
Wow.
So it was really cool. It was a kind of a way that got his grandfather back in the game. Dairy farming is a tough business these days, and they have since sold off their herd. Jeremy has a day job, but he still farms bloody butcher corn for us, and now calls himself a bourbon farmer. So he tells people he's a bourbon farmer.
The first year was 7 acres. I remember taking the dog in the truck to go visit, scared to death that something was going to happen to our corn before we got the chance to start distilling it. And it was so much fun. Now he's up to 29 acres for us, and it is a lot of fun to go and visit him now and not worry about the fact that we might not be able to get that corn.
We used to load drums in the back of my pickup truck by hand,
shovel it by hand,
bring them back. And now, we've got silos in the back, and he delivers it in a big farm truck, and we auger it in. So,
and he drinks a lot more whiskey than he did before he started.
So that's our corn. Rye is a different story. Rye, we're a little bit further out, and we have, again, our good buddy Herman Mahalich of Dad's Hat to thank for connecting us with our current rye farmer, Nevada Meese. He's out near Herman in eastern PA, but we get our rye from the same source that Dad's Hat gets theirs.
Mostly because
Meadowbrook Farms.
If Pittsburgh has a bad winter, then the rye crop gets wiped out. And the first year that happened to us, the farmer moved. And when it was time for us to receive the shipment in March and April,
forwarding address.
we were out of, I called him on his cell phone. He goes, "Oh, I'm not there anymore. The crop went bad. I don't know if we have any." So that's when we had to, we were calling Amish. We were calling, is anybody out there ready
You're calling the Amish? What?
They have lots of grain, right? You think
but with smoke signals? How do you call the Amish?
Oh, come on.
No. You know how you do
all
it?
have phones.
Marty, that's actually a good question. What you do is you talk to the farmers in the area they are building barns for some of the local farmers around here. And then they talk to them while they're building the barns. They walk out and they say to the guy building the barn, "You got any pride?" It was awful.
And Was that, I mean, just because of storms or climate change, or I don't know if you've had those sort of conversations with specific varietals or the location?
Do you think it's the Pittsburgh weather?
So I mean, this was one particular season, and you know, we were scrambling for rye, and we found Nevada, and you know, we haven't looked back. So I'm sure that the harvests here have gotten better, or
but the farmers just don't seem to want to grow it, do they?
It's you know, rye's a cover crop, and it's a winter crop, and you know, we have notoriously wet, damp spring.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if you get a particularly wet spring, the rye will just lay down in the and you know, you can't get the harvest out of it. So Western Pennsylvania has a bit of an issue, especially with, you know, those rye crops.
And is that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, has a conversation with those farmers? Are they exploring different varietals, or what's? I don't know. You know, we think about cover crop traditionally, at least, you know, like post Whiskey Rebellion, and to your point, it's more about cover crop. But I think farmers are less interested about the varietal, or there's no incentive. So I'm just curious on what that conversation's been for you guys.
Yeah, I think more and more farmers, you know, we get approached by more and more farmers now inquiring whether we would be interested. You know, at this point, we're pretty much committed to Nevada.
We have a sense of loyalty.
He does a great rye, and
he saved us.
But I do think there are other farmers, and as more and more distilleries come on board, I think the opportunity is going to be there for Western Pennsylvania farmers. I know there are some guys doing some great things with heritage grains. Bob McDonald is a name that comes to mind. He was at the American Whiskey Convention. He grows a ton of heritage corns.
He grows. Guy that got out of the dairy farming business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what is your guys' day-to-day chores look like? I mean, because you not only have a distillery to run, you got to market your brands, you got to get them out there, and you know, who does what? Do you have somebody? Do you have a crew? Do you have lackeys who do all your distilling now?
Our sons, our sons. Yeah. I said I wasn't going to mention them because they didn't mention us to you, but Rob and Kevin are our two sons, and you know, they're engineers by trade, but they're fantastic distillers, and you know, they kind of run the production these days. You know, we have a 600-gallon system. We have a 600-gallon copper pot still. We're very much committed to pot still whiskey. We do 3 mashes a week. So if we're making bourbon or rye, we do 3 mashes a week of that same whiskey. We do a 6-day fermentation. We double pot distill. So, you know, we're putting away around 250 gallons of whiskey a week, probably around 5 53-gallon barrels. So that's kind of what Rob and Kevin do. Ellen is responsible for
front of the house. Like when we first started, I thought it would be easy to do whiskey cocktails. I'll just go ask a bartender and he'll give me some recipes. And then people will love our whiskey after they have these great cocktails, and then they will buy lots of bottles. And that didn't work out because the bartenders don't want to give you their.
Honestly, I'm laughing at your tone of voice more than anything, because you're obviously like.
You know, in Pittsburgh, if you want to know how to make a whiskey cocktail, you don't ask a bartender, you ask me. Because it is crazy how cool whiskey is. I mean, whiskey in a cocktail is absolutely fantastic, but that got wiped out because of Prohibition, and people got used to drinking vodka or white spirits. And so in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure this is in a lot of other cities, it's tequila, rum, and vodka. And everyone says that's what they drink. And if they drink whiskey, it's a Manhattan. So I've spent a lot of my time not only researching the history to give us a good brand, but also researching ingredients for cocktails. And I found, believe it or not, that the best source for whiskey ingredients in cocktails is before Prohibition before Prohibition and the Whiskey Rebellion. So we have developed this little thing that's working really well for us, where every month we have 4 new local seasonal cocktails.
Wow.
We serve the classic cocktails all the time. You can come in and get a Manhattan, an old fashioned anytime you want.
There's
But
nothing
we have-
wrong with a Manhattan.
Oh.
Just saying. Just saying.
So it's been so much fun to do that and see how people come in at the first of the month to try the new cocktails, comment on them, bring their friends in, and then they all show up at the end of the month, which is this weekend coming up, to buy all of the cocktails one more time before they're gone for a year.
But our kind of our thought on that, and I grew up in Pittsburgh. It was a shot in a beer town, and I was probably in my 40s before I realized, you didn't have to shoot a shot of whiskey. You could sip it, you could have a cocktail out of it. And to a lot of degrees, I think a lot of people still feel that way. So we felt the best way to kind of get our whiskey out there is to have this incredible craft cocktail program featuring our whiskeys to show the versatility of whiskey. You don't have to have a shot in a beer. You can make fantastic cocktails out of it, and that's really worked for us. People come in, they have this cocktail that they never would have believed you could make with whiskey. We have a celery shrub martini this month that shrub with celery juice and rye whiskey and a little grenadine, and it's phenomenal. And people will have something like that and say, wow, I could make this. So they will take their bottle, and we publish all of our recipes. We're very transparent. We want people to be able to recreate the cocktail experience they had here in our tasting room.
And the cool thing about shrubs, you're starting to see those, I'm sure, Liz, appearing in New York City. They're starting to use shrubs a lot now. That is a 1794 version of food preservation.
Right.
So,
yeah. Acid.
Rebellion, and I can use it and be a hero. So I do.
I got 4 shrubs in my refrigerator. I mean,
all right.
we're like 12 minutes from Tate Farms.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I got shrubs coming out my ears.
Yep.
And ours are
Literally.
they're good.
Literally.
Yeah.
What's on your cocktail program right now, or what's coming up?
So our October cocktails are always a big hit. I take Concord grapes from a local farm.
Ooh.
And I soak them in our white whiskey when it comes right off the still. And it gives it sort of a Concord grape flavor. We add lime juice to that, huge hit. Make sure you drape the Concord over the edge of the glass. That's the grapes that sells every time. And
It's all about the garnish.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, now it's apple season. There's a lot of great apple farms around here. So I have a ciderkin. A ciderkin, the name is derived from what happened in 1794 with whiskey. In 1794, during the Whiskey Rebellion, people thought that whiskey was a vitamin, and they wanted to give it to their children. And it helped them sleep. It killed
Vitamin
germs.
W.
Right here, please take your vitamin. It's whiskey. And so, but what they would do is they would put in some form of fruit and some form of sugar. And as time went by, people started saying, I'll have my whiskey the old-fashioned way. So that's where the name old-fashioned comes from. It's fruit and sugar in whiskey. But I do, for the month of October, I do apple cider and maple syrup in our whiskey. We call it the ciderkin so that kids will drink it. Not kids, but people young at heart will drink it. That's a big hit. It's always a good time to do a Black Manhattan. And I forget
What is it? What's a Black Manhattan?
That's
Amaro.
It's a Manhattan with an Amaro instead of a vermouth, right? And we use our
so
we
again,
use our
right,
peated bourbon, so we
in
make
that,
a
yeah.
we make a peated bourbon, so we get a peated malt from Scotland, and it just is this hybrid whiskey of an American bourbon and an Islay Scotch, and so we use that as the base whiskey in this Black Manhattan.
And going back to Marty's point at the beginning, Amaros are not made in Pennsylvania. So by law, I can't sell that. So the cocktail is only allowed to be, I gift you that, but it's an easy one to copy at home, right? You can buy my peated bourbon and you can buy cases, that some people do, and enjoy that Black Manhattan. It seems appropriate for Halloween.
Nobody produces one in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, actually, there are Amaros, Pennsylvania.
Right, we
produced.
do use
We
those.
do use those, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in my glorious stay as brand ambassador for Benedictine, that's Benedictine. Well, it's
I love Benedictine. Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah.
Really good cocktail, and Lou's a big fan. Is
Yeah.
a Frisco from 1906.
Awesome.
Rye,
cocktail.
basically a almost a rye. No, it's not. It was
Bouquet?
Benedictine lemon juice
Benedictine
and
bourbon.
rye.
So I introduced that cocktail when you guys come out.
Rye.
Yeah, right. When you guys come out, you have to go to Angelo's restaurant down the street. I introduced him to that cocktail, and it goes great with his Italian food. And he has it on his menu now. He uses Liberty
Awesome.
Pole Spirits.
And then the other thing you guys should do, because you're in Washington, Pennsylvania, George and Martha enjoyed his rye in Punches.
So his Cherry Bounce is one of our December cocktails.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you know,
His cherry tree bounce, the one he cut down.
Right.
No.
like he did, and he was taxing
Yeah, he
whiskey,
cut
and
it
then
down.
went back home and made it. I wonder how much tax he paid.
I'm sure he paid his taxes.
Seriously.
I'm sure he did.
But if you come to Washington for those cherry bounces, everyone has their own recipe here, and there's quite a little competition. They'll come in, they'll taste mine, and they'll go, no. You need to add this and that. My grandfather. So it's quite a thing here. You have to come try it.
I think I sense a festival coming up.
Cherry bounce.
Cherry Bounce Festival.
That's perfect. Christmas.
It would be a small
Cherry
festival,
bounces.
but it would be freaking awesome.
It has to happen at Christmas because Martha would always take the cherries when they were ripe in July and put them in George's whiskey and then serve it at Christmas to all her guests.
Oh wow! For July, so for 6 months.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Years on the whiskey.
Yeah, long soak.
And then you also have to have the right spices, which is where the argument comes in. What spices do you use? Well, to be honest with you, I've modified the recipe to make my whiskey taste good, right? Because the object of the game is to sell it. So
I read that Martha would just soak George's teeth in them for a
she was
long
a lot
period of
older.
What?
She was a lot older than he was.
time. Made him happy, very happy.
George had false teeth.
Yeah. That's what I was like,
They were wooden, so it held the flavor.
Actually, they're made of other people's teeth.
Ew.
The whole wooden thing. Well, that's what you did back then. You got
He
other
had
people's
several
teeth,
sets. I understood he had as many as 7 sets of teeth.
and
Oh,
they're held together. I saw a pair once. They're held together by springs.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
how. Yeah.
I'm
They
getting this
move around.
I'm getting this image of him. He's riding across Pennsylvania to a rest.
Constantly biting his cheek.
Wait, I got to put my backpack and switch teeth. Hold on, folks.
Wait a minute, I've got a smile a lot. Let me put on this pair.
they're not my eating pair.
Then he had a pair with little vampire teeth, just
Just
Right.
Halloween.
Right.
little plastic ones.
I've actually seen Martha Washington's recipe book. We went to a thing at the Pennsylvania Historical Society in Philadelphia. Friends of ours are involved in it. We went down. They took us back in the archives. I mean, everybody was good. It wasn't just us, but so they're showing you one of the original Declaration of Independence and this, that, and the other. And there was Martha's. It was Martha's cookbook. It was
Does
pretty
she have
wild.
good handwriting?
She had legible handwriting, so
Yeah,
that's
wow.
that's a plus. But the funny thing was, you could tell where she, they would take the thumb and do it, but the paper had eroded there from like the oils, and so there's this like little cup in the bottom of the. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, she wasn't really expecting people to be reading it 200
No, who does?
Yeah.
Oh my
years
God.
later. Get out of my cookbook. What the hell are you people?
Get the hell out of there!
Scram! Those are my secret recipes.
If only they would have
I was
invented
thinking
sticky
that
notes.
I wish now I would have asked if there was a cherry bounce recipe.
I'm sure there would have been.
I'm sure there is.
I'm
I
sure.
think she just kind of rubbed that whole cutting down the cherry tree into George's face. All the time. I'm gonna make cherry bounce. I'm gonna make cherry
Dumbass.
pies. I'm gonna make McDonald's apple turnovers or cherry turnovers. Before McDonald's does.
Speaking of recipes,
George, your whiskey's no good. I'll put some cherries in it. Try to help it.
Whoa!
So speaking of recipes,
Go ahead. Yes.
you made a
She's
comment.
just trying to drag shit back online here. God
Just-
bless you.
You made a comment earlier about manipulating recipes and your formula. So I wanted to just circle back to your R&D process and how you kind of honed in on, for example, wheat and the rye, mash bill, your peated bourbon, that sort of thing. So did that happen in your background artifact there, Jim? Or
So, Liz, honestly, all of our core whiskeys, so we have kind of 5 core whiskeys in our portfolio that we always want to have available. We have our Bassettown, which is the white rye, and our aged rye, which is the same juice, simply aged. We have a corn whiskey, we have a wheated bourbon, and we have a peated bourbon. Those are all basically just scaled up versions of what I had kind of developed as a hobby distiller. Now, I will tell you that we have kind of modified a little bit of our recipes, over the 5 years we've been, in production. The peated bourbon, Ellen is a huge Isla Scotch fan. And as a hobby distiller, I was making rye and bourbon. I'm not so much of a big Isla Scotch guy. So Ellen said, well, why don't you make a whiskey that I like? So as a hobby distiller, right? We get our grains. We get our grains from brewery supply stores. And I will tell you that peated malt is not a big beer. So you could get it, but you get it in like quarter-pound, bags, because a little goes a long way in a beer. So, I started to do the math and say, well, my God, even in a 10-gallon still, it would cost me, X amount of dollars to get enough peated malt to do this Isla style Scotch. So I said, well, maybe I'll just cheap out and get enough to add to a bourbon base, and we'll go from there. And it was phenomenal. And that's how the peated bourbon was born.
Yeah.
When we had, before we upsized from Little Harold to Big Harold, we actually had a 15-gallon research and development still. And do you want to know the name of the research and development still? It was Howard. So we had Harold and Howard. Those are her dad and my dad's names.
Oh my God!
Yeah, but it sounds like it can't be true, but it was. My dad.
Did they get along?
So those are better names.
But we used to do, a lot more of small batch experimentation when we had a smaller still. But when we upsized, we didn't have room to keep him on the production floor. So, so we haven't done as much experimenting in the last couple of years. But yeah, our core portfolio is pretty much scaled up versions of what we were doing as hobby distillers.
I want to follow up on that, and I don't want you to get into any illegal details, but is there more illegal distilling, like at home distilling, going on than I realize?
I think so. We see it a lot. We'll see people come in with jars of, hey, try this. How's this taste?
What do you think we need?
I just met one at a party here in Central PA. That's what I was.
Yeah,
Sam's party, of course.
There was a few here in Illinois, Lou, that ended up starting their own distilleries, but they started distilling at home. Yeah.
Well, what's Joe Congiusti at Benny's used to make grappa. So,
well, the guys at Kings County, Colin.
Right.
They wrote a book on urban moonshine. I kind of think that at least for us, it gave us that kind of confidence that the scale is completely different. The material handling is a whole different ball game. But in the end, we had at least kind of spent a lot of years learning how to distill. It does a lot of changes, but it does apply to a bigger operation. So.
Okay.
So how many people? How big is your whole crew? Are you employing, since you're a manufacturer? Are you employing like hundreds? That would be so cool.
No.
Dependent upon you guys?
Not even close. Not even close. No. We have a full-time staff of 5, and if you think of the Hough family, that accounts for 4 of them. So we have one full-time guy, our operations manager, Jeff. Fantastic guy. He's been one of our kind of core part-time helpers from the beginning. He was a teacher. He was kind of anxious. COVID really kind of broke him in teaching, and he was anxious for an opportunity to try something new. So we brought Jeff on board. I think we have
8 part-time bartenders.
Yeah, we have part-time 8, or I think it's up to like 10 now.
Oh, 10 now.
Kitchen and part-time bartenders.
So you have a restaurant?
We do not. When I say kitchen,
Kitchen,
dishwashing
It's,
and elixir prep. Yeah.
Fruit prep, garnish prep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
How much of your output do you sell there? Was it all of it, or?
Oh no. Probably we probably, from our tasting room, it's probably 70-ish% of our sales are from the tasting room. Pennsylvania libations, which I think we talked about prior to starting, is a good chunk of the rest. And then we're just now starting, Lew, to expand into your favorite entity, the fine wine and good spirit stores.
Guess where I was at 6 o'clock this morning delivering. How many cases I delivered? I forgot now. 14 and 20. 20
30,
34.
The warehouse. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that warehouse.
Yeah.
Ellen, do you wear one of those kind of like coveralls with a little cap, and you have the little hand cart?
No. We pull in, and I get out with my coffee cup and try to wear something attractive. And then I go up through, and they're like, "You're next. You're next." They always are really good to us. You're next.
Something sheer, but not too
right.
big.
You're next. Ryan is the guy you check in with. Jimmy's on the dock, and then there's a big shout out to Jack and the guy in the back who schedules us, whose name is not Houston, but I call him Houston.
Oh my God!
Yeah, those guys. They're like, and that was fun. It was fun. You had to get up at 4:30. That's something they don't tell you when you start a distillery. That you have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to drive a truck into Pittsburgh to try and get
to milk the cows, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. That's what I always found fascinating with distilleries, even when they're like right here in a big city. They're keeping farmers' hours, and I always thought,
totally.
can you just work a little later? Like,
It's glamorous. It seems very glamorous, but the reality.
You start at 7:30 in the morning, and you're working on a distillation or something, and you're closing at 10 o'clock at night. Your tasting room.
Because we do, one of our, kind of one of our circular economy things that we like to talk about is our relationship with our farmer who takes our spent grain.
Yeah.
And this guy, you could set your watch on this guy showing up at 8 a.m. every morning to collect the stillage. And, you got to be here for him. And that's late for him. He wanted to come at 7, and we kind of said, well, couldn't you push it back and maybe to 8?
Until 10.
Yeah.
What's funny is the cows come running when they see the truck with the little white bins on the back. Like, yeah. So we even make cows happy. Politicians and cows. What does that say?
Well,
they both create a bunch of crap. That's what that would be my take on that.
Yeah, they're both
just to
big
get into
holes
a
in the ozone.
little bit of politics. We did have one question came in because it's a Pennsylvania thing. The LCB, the state stores, Pennsylvania's control stores are currently, and he said rationing whiskey. He's obviously exaggerating.
Yeah.
The state stores have about, I think it was like 46.
Yeah.
SKUs that
have a
two
2-bottle limit.
bottles a day. Only 2 bottles a day. And one of those SKUs is Jack Daniel's handles.
Yeah.
But you can only get 2 of them a day. And people are worried about this. Like,
yeah.
And it's all supply chain issues. I remember talking to the people from Jack Daniel's about, I don't know, it's like 4 or 5 months ago. And they were saying they can't get the glass for the handles. It's just, they're filling them as many of them as they can, that's generally a bar product, the handles. So That's what's going on with that. They don't have the stuff. And I mean, honestly, some of that stuff that's supposedly on 2 bottles a day, I'm sorry, E.H. Taylor, show me where I can get $2 bottles a day, and I'll go there. You know?
Right.
Doesn't it make the whiskey more valuable, Jim? Why didn't they put Liberty Pole on that list?
It is. It's the list you want to be on.
I want to be on that list. Yeah.
Not list.
Could you please sell 2 bottles a day of our whiskey, please?
It just, it speaks to where we're at in the whiskey market right now, though, right? I mean, there's just a ton of, flippers and people that stand in line when the store's open, and where's my Blantons, and it's just a crazy environment for whiskey right now. So.
What now? Where else are you guys available outside of Pennsylvania? Anywhere?
No, we're really not. We're in the fine wine and good spirits stores in Pennsylvania. We're available here at our tasting room at Pennsylvania Libations in Pittsburgh and Reading Terminal Market. And our goal, right? We're 5 years old, but we really we focus on, we want to do well in our backyard. I mean, that's our first primary goal. Before somebody in California would be interested in Liberty Pole, it's got to be, really kind of the popular item here in Western Pennsylvania. So we focus on that, and based on our production capacity, that's really all we can support right now, anyway. So
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I've seen a number of distilleries that get wooed by a retailer in some state, and so they're going, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you want my stuff over in New Jersey? Oh, that's great. I'll sign up. I'll go to all this trouble, and you get it to the one store, and then can't really afford to promote it in that state, and it just sits on that shelf, and that's product that could have gone and sold right in your backyard. Think like the Romans, conquer Rome first, move out, then later conquer the Gauls, massacre the Germanic tribes, and then get in trouble with the pigs.
You're a goddamn genius. That's our philosophy right there.
Every week, baby. Free marketing advice.
We should dress the 2 boys up just like centurions at the next big whiskey event, and just kind of drive that point home.
Yeah.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have them do the shield and have the furry hat. The helmet with the fur on top.
So
these are ideas.
Lou, go for it.
No, I was just we were talking about we talked about mills earlier. We talked about local sourcing. How cooperative does your thing with the farmers get? I guess what I'm asking is there any chance of you guys getting together on a larger project? I'm thinking of the people up in Washington, where the farmers and the distillers there actually helped fund and develop a local maltings. Can you see anything like that happening?
So not to
maybe not the funding part.
I haven't heard any talk of that in Pennsylvania. I do think that I look at states like Texas and how they have their certified Texas craft whiskey, and I do think that that's something that, and New York with their Empire Rye, and I do think that Pennsylvania, that's an opportunity that I think we need to look into. We kind of have the history, right there. It's ours for the taking, Monongahela Rye whiskey. I would love to see some sort of a Pennsylvania Monongahela Rye whiskey designation.
I almost think that we ought to do it before somebody takes it away and does it for us, right?
Yeah. But I think collaborations like that would then ultimately lead to, kind of what you suggested in terms of, encouraging maltsters and people to start those types of business that would, have a natural market with these craft distillers in the state.
I mean, you mentioned earlier something about or somebody did, about a virtuous circle. I just think that, you know, and again, I know I keep talking about this drive this morning, but I keep seeing, as I make that drive between Philadelphia and Center County in the middle of Pennsylvania, I keep seeing more and more fields of small grain, not corn. I mean, there's always a lot of corn, there's always a lot of soybeans, but over the past 5.5 years, I've seen a lot more barley and wheat and rye grown in Pennsylvania, and I can't help thinking it's a good thing for the soil, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Now, I know that the Historical Society here in Washington, Pennsylvania is working on getting Monongahela rye declared a UNESCO World History Culture.
really?
Yeah, they're
Wow.
filling out all the
Wow.
paperwork, so that means you can't make Monongahela rye in Colorado. But I guess that
Yeah,
takes.
but you know, Herman's going to want to know if you can make it in Bristol.
Oh, for
So-
God's sakes! Oh, Herman, take a hike! Oh my God!
Already made a Monongahela.
You know he's copying us all the time, Lou. Tell him, quit copying us, Herman. Jeez.
And what is a part of that definition, if you don't mind sharing that?
I'm not sure that, Liz, there is a definition for it. I mean, when Ben Franklin landed in Paris, he wrote in his memoirs that one of the first questions he was asked was, "Did you bring any of that Monongahela rye with you?" It's just a term that has been around, since the 1700s.
It's mentioned in Moby Dick.
Yeah, right, Moby Dick,
Oh, wow.
absolutely. And kind of a very loose definition, at least one we subscribe to. It's basically a whiskey style, rye whiskey style that has a very high rye content, and most importantly, a lack of corn. That's where really we kind of get into the difference between a Maryland rye or a Kentucky rye. Both of those have some corn in their mash bill, so they have a little bit of a sweeter profile.
Right.
Monongahela ryes have, that higher rye content and a lack of corn. And you can
I also
take
think
it.
it's the water too.
Well, you
Jim.
can even take it
Yeah.
even further to, that the water is drawn from the Monongahela or one of the tributaries.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is draining minerals right off the Allegheny Mountains. So
Yes.
If it has a higher ratio of rye and no corn,
Yes.
are we talking it would have malted barley,
Yes.
or could you use other grain like
Wait.
I mean,
Big.
Herman's is rye, malted rye, and malt.
Right.
That's it.
And we use wheat. We have a little bit of wheat in ours. We have a 13% wheat in our mash bill. And Lou, your friend Sam Kamlenik has assured us that he's found historical Monongahela rye mash bills that contain wheat. So he said, you guys are fine. Yeah.
Between distilling and brewing, because that's the line I'm always crossing with my writing. So much of what we think is sorry, I'll start over. A lot of the small distilling and brewing has taken place since, let's just lay down a date and say 1980.
Mhm.
And we seem to think that everything that existed in 1980 is how things were always done, and it wasn't. Beer styles changed all the time. Whiskey mash bills didn't just change, they were a mad multiplicity of things. People made whiskey with all kinds of, it wasn't like, oh yeah, everybody did it this way.
Right.
They didn't.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Whatever you had. If you had extra wheat, you'd throw that into your.
If you had a shitload of oats because they grew well, you used oats.
I think
Yeah.
to the point earlier about the shrubs, right? You made it was food preservation, right?
Yeah.
That's
Whiskey,
weird.
right.
That's whiskey. Like that's
Yeah.
Right?
I still like it.
you asked the local historians, and the yeast was another issue. Some of them used their bread yeast that have been growing on their wood burner or near their fireplace for years, and some use tavern yeast around here. So I know, there's been other distilleries that have tried to research the actual recipe, but the historians laugh and say the same thing that Lou just said. There were so many varietals in grains. There was so much difference in the water and so many difference in yeast that they have always felt that if you're going to say what was Monongahela rye, you have to make it here out of what's local to be Monongahela rye. And you can make it any way you want to, but it has to be made here in Monongahela. And I like that. I like that designation, because then now if I'm a whiskey collector, I could go around to all the local whiskey distilleries here, like Napa Valley, and I could try the different whiskeys, even though they're using maybe a different rye, or they're using water from their area. We get all those beautiful expressions of rye whiskey, and it's all in the same area. I think we should do the same thing, Lou. I think that's what should happen, but the distilleries in Pennsylvania will be upset because people like Herman, well, Bucks County didn't have Monongahela rye. He'll want to be in on it. You're right.
Oh, he'll want an exception because he's from there. Okay.
Right, he is.
Okay.
Right.
He is from there, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's probably something to be said for it. I as a consumer and as a writer, I worry about the restrictive nature of things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you also, you've got a heritage and I think that, when you first said that about the UN heritage designation, I'm like, what are you? The more I think about it as we've been talking, I'm like, you're goddamn right.
It's only like they say it's a culture, like they designate it as a culture. So I think it would be all right. I do, because I like being able to say that Jim and I have made it. Maybe that's just us as craft distillers, but I like being able to say, hey, Jim developed this recipe. We've been using the rye. We've been making it. We've been aging it. It means something to say that that's from grain to glass, rather than, hey, I'm out in Colorado making Monongahela rye.
I bought some shit.
Yeah, I bought some shit. Right.
You should have T-shirts.
Style,
That would be nice. T-shirts are just like, I bought some shit.
I bought some shit.
In parentheses, including this T-shirt.
I bought some shirt from Indiana, including this. No, Jim. No, we made this shirt ourselves. We made this ourselves. This is how we bought some shit. We're grain to glass, even on our T-shirt.
Well, there has been, I was just thinking about that, Jim. There has been a vodka rebellion in a way in that people have rebelled against vodka.
I
that's true. That's true.
told you.
Over the last 20 years, man.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
Fred Minnick is the lead.
Yeah.
Fred's behind me. Vodka. I was bartending in the 90s, and people were ordering these vodka martinis without even vermouth. And I thought, Jesus Christ, why don't I just get some rubbing alcohol, put some water in it?
So true.
Yeah.
I put an onion in it. Big deal.
Yeah. That ain't a martini.
It's not a martini.
Watered down vodka. They always wanted ice. They wanted you to shake it.
Right.
So there was ice on
That's
it.
diluted. Oh,
Damn.
we are so on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, sales have dipped for vodka. I mean, it's still.
They're back.
Oh,
That's like when somebody.
that's COVID, because they put those giant 1.75s with the handled bottles
And
up
the
front
sippy
in all
straw.
the stores. And you could put it in your lemonade at work.
Or your IV.
Or your IV.
Or your IV. But it's like when somebody.
Wait,
go ahead.
I thought Liz had a question there.
No, Liz never has questions.
She looked like she was ready to go.
It's just what we're saying is making her brain hurt. That's what.
Yeah. I was just thinking that we're unfortunately running a bit long time. So I was gonna briefly mention, so green rectangle, right? You can click that and check out the website for Liberty Poll. And you mentioned you have cocktail recipes as well as
It's on our website.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So take a peek at that. Check that out. We had a number of comments. Belinda, hi Jim and Ellen. Great to see you.
Monotony. Hi, Belinda.
Also mentioned the rye is swoonable.
Great word.
Swoonable.
I love it.
We have Brad Krause, our man Brad from Panama, our man in Panama.
Yeah.
Wow. Hi, Brad.
Brad, yeah, always good to see you. He also responding to Denise. It's cocktail hour somewhere. Great build, Brad. That's a good point. Yeah, so we're coming up on the hour and looking ahead to next week, and I'm actually unprepared for next week. Actually, no, I am. I'm super excited. I'm going to see him later today, but we have Josh Wortman from Distill Ventures, so that's going to be next
Oh,
week.
right.
And yeah,
Been in the works for a while. That's great.
it's been in the works for a while, and I was super excited because, again, I mentioned I'll see him later today. So please come back and join us next week, and we'll have a cool little chat with him.
Yeah, and Jim and Ellen, I noticed the glasses you're drinking out of are from some other planet. I don't know where they came from.
Martin, I tried to drink like this so
Yeah, very
that they kill you.
Please send us your contact info.
Actually, I gave it to your sons years ago.
Oh, great.
They don't talk.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
They
great.
know I shoot those guys.
That's a black hole.
It's a black hole. Yeah.
Information.
Thank you, Lou. It was good seeing you.
Guys told me so.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys could make it. I really appreciate
Yeah, it
it.
was
Yeah,
awesome.
this is great.
And
Thanks
I
so
love
much
you.
for having us.
See you.
Yeah.
I love your background too. It looks like a painting behind you.
Well, that's Bob.
That's Bob the deer.
Everyone's got a name.
Yeah, everybody has a name. Yeah.
Me and an object or a dead animal. They all have names.
Yeah.
Cool. And I see you have a pumpkin as well, and I've
Oh,
Nice. I am really excited to go get a pumpkin this year. I love fall, so thank you for having the pumpkin as well.
Yeah. And Liz, so we have two, and I won't take this long, but we have two friends that we've gotten to know that are customers, but they're from Denmark, and they have brought in Stouning whiskey to share with us because they love it so much, and I had it a couple years ago, so it's exciting to hear that it's going to be in the States. So that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's good to hear. So everyone, moral of the story: drink more rye.
There you go.
All right,
Always
yay.
drink rye.
Cheers.
Let's
Drink
see,
rye.
before you go,
Cheers, guys.
let's see your shirt. Bring your shirt up. I can't see your shirt.
Oh, Stouning.
Yeah.
No, he's
What is that?
Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, Marty, do you recognize that shirt?
Oh, is that from
Baumgartner shirt you sent me.
Hey,
Thank
how
you.
about that,
Thank
huh?
you again, buddy.
Gotta send me
Thank you
shirt.
every time I wear it.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, kiddies.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.
Everybody.
Cheers.
No,
Stay
thanks.
healthy.
Thanks, guys. Hope to see you soon.
Yep.